Picture a city floating in the open Pacific, 92 little islands laced together by canals of seawater. Now picture that every one of those islands is man-made, stacked by hand from stone. The whole thing weighs an estimated 250,000 tons of black basalt, hauled across an island and out over a reef. The people who built it had no metal tools, no wheel, no pulleys, and not a single draft animal to pull a load. And here is the part that keeps me up at night. After they finished, they walked away and let the sea take it back. This is Nan Madol, off the coast of Pohnpei, and the locals call it the Venice of the Pacific. I am Quill, and I crack history like a case, so today the vault opens on the strangest ruin in the ocean. The question is not who built it, we know that. The question is how on earth they pulled it off. Let me set the scene, because the location is half the mystery. Pohnpei is a single volcanic island in Micronesia, a green speck in a very large and very empty stretch of the western Pacific. Hug its shore and you reach a shallow coral reef, the kind of turquoise flat you would fly over without a second glance. On that reef sits Nan Madol, a sprawl of roughly 92 artificial islets. Not natural islands, not sandbars, but platforms deliberately raised out of the lagoon. Between them run tidal canals, channels of open water that fill and drain with the sea. You do not walk this city, you paddle it, gliding a canoe down watery streets between walls of stacked stone. That is why the nickname stuck, a Venice built by a people the outside world had never heard of. The name Nan Madol means something like the spaces between, a nod to those very canals. The whole complex sprawls across a broad stretch of reef, far bigger than any single village. And every square foot of those islets had to be built up from nothing, layer by patient layer. So before we ask how, let us look at what they were actually stacking. The building material is the first clue, and it is a strange one. The walls are made of basalt, a dark volcanic rock, but not carved blocks. Instead, the stone comes in natural columns, long prisms that basalt forms as it cools slowly underground. You have seen them if you have seen the Giant's Causeway, those neat six-sided pillars, stacked like firewood. The builders of Nan Madol used them exactly that way, laying the columns crosswise, log cabin style. One layer running one direction, the next layer running across it, locking the wall together without a drop of mortar. In the gaps they packed coral rubble, filling the cores of the islets to raise them above the tide. Some of these walls still stand more than 25 feet high after 8 centuries in the surf. The largest pillars are the showstoppers, stones up to about 20 feet long. A single one of those columns can weigh as much as 50 tons. For scale, 50 tons is roughly the weight of a fully loaded railway car, sitting out on a reef. Add it all up and the estimates land near 250,000 tons of basalt. I want you to hold that number, because in a moment it is going to feel impossible. Here is where the case gets genuinely hard, and where I have to be honest with you. The basalt does not come from the reef, or from anywhere near it. There is no source of this stone at Nan Madol, not one loose column occurring naturally on the site. The quarries sit on the far side of Pohnpei, on the opposite coast of the island. So every pillar in that city was cut loose miles away and somehow brought to the reef. Think about what that means for 250,000 tons of rock. It means 50-ton columns crossing the interior or rounding the coast of a mountainous tropical island. And the people doing it, the builders, had a technology kit that would make an engineer wince. No iron, no bronze, no metal of any kind to shape or lever the stone. No wheel, so no carts, no barrows, nothing that rolls on an axle. No pulleys and no block and tackle to lift a heavy weight cleanly. No horses, no oxen, no draft animals at all in these islands to haul a load. Just human muscle, rope made from plant fiber, wood, and a very deep well of patience. That, right there, is the true mystery of Nan Madol. Not aliens, not a lost super race, but ordinary people doing something that sounds flatly impossible. So how did they do it? Let me lay out the honest answer first. We do not fully know, and any investigator who tells you otherwise is selling something. The exact transport method has never been proven, and that gap is where the myths crawl in. But we are not clueless, and the leading ideas are grounded and human. The strongest hypothesis is water, because a 50-ton stone is far easier to float than to carry. The thinking goes that crews lashed the basalt columns to rafts, or slung them beneath canoes. At high tide, the buoyancy of the water takes most of the weight off your shoulders. You paddled a load around the coast and straight up the canals to the building site. The tidal channels of Nan Madol may not just be streets, they may be the delivery road. For moving stone on land, the tools are leverage and rolling. Wooden levers to pry and inch a column, palm log rollers to move it along the ground. Ramps of piled earth and rubble to slide the stones up as the walls grew taller. None of it is magic, all of it is slow, and every bit of it is backbreaking. Now let me clear the myths off the table, because you have heard them. The stones were not levitated by chanting, and the coral did not grow into walls on command. It was rope, sweat, tide and time, which is somehow a more astonishing answer than any spell. So who were these builders, and why raise a stone city on the sea at all? The answer is a dynasty called the Saudeleur, the first line to unite all of Pohnpei under one rule. They held power for roughly 5 centuries, from around 1100 to 1628. Nan Madol was their capital, the political and ceremonial heart of the whole island. This was not a fortress and not really a town, it was a royal and sacred center. Different islets had different jobs, and the layout tells the story. One district was for the living, the seat of the rulers, the priests, and the nobility. At its height perhaps 1,000 people lived out on the reef. Another district was for the dead, with tombs and mortuary islets for the elite. The grandest of them is a royal tomb ringed by walls the height of a house. The Saudeleur ruled from here in part by keeping the nobles close and under their eye. They summoned the chiefs of Pohnpei to live at the capital, where loyalty could be watched. Food and tribute flowed out to the reef from the whole island to feed a city that grew nothing. Every yam, every fish, every drop of fresh water had to be paddled in. A city on the water is a statement, and the statement was power. To build the impossible is to tell every subject that the ruler commands the impossible. Every case has a turning point, and for the Saudeleur it arrives around the year 1628. By then, the tradition says, the dynasty had grown harsh and its rule heavy. Into that story comes a figure named Quill, half man and half legend. The oral histories cast him as an outsider, a warrior with a claim to set things right. He came with his followers, and he overthrew the last of the Saudeleur rulers. Power on Pohnpei shifted to a new system of chiefs, and the old order was finished. Quill, the story goes, actually settled at Nan Madol himself for a time. But a stone city on a reef is a hungry thing, and slowly the people drifted back to shore. The islets were abandoned, the canals left to the tide, the tombs left to silence. The mangroves moved in, roots prying at the walls, green swallowing the black stone. And here the taboo matters, so I will treat it with the respect it is owed. For the people of Pohnpei this is sacred and haunted ground, wrapped in real tradition and real caution. It is a place you do not disturb lightly, and that reverence helped keep it standing. So the outside world only stumbled onto it late, half ruined and heavy with story. Today, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, protected and studied and still slowly sinking. 250,000 tons of proof that people did this, no spacecraft required. Here is my ruling on the case, the real wonder was never who, it was how, and the how is us. 1,000 people, no metal, no wheel, floating a city onto the sea by tide and sheer will. If you like a mystery that hands the credit back to human hands, subscribe to the History Vault, and I will meet you at the next one.